Good morning again. Good morning again. Welcome. Welcome to the annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration breakfast. We are so glad that you're here. This is a year of a lot of firsts. One being, we're in a new space. So let's give it up for the new space. It's always a beautiful sight, to look out and see everyone that's here, and you all look good, and there's a group of students who are awake, and so it's a beautiful, beautiful day. So students, just kind of wave your hand. That was a test. You passed. And as we're starting this morning, I'm going to label this as Dream Week. We'll tell you a little bit about some of the other activities that we've had in celebration of Dr. King this week, in the past week. So without any further ado, we will now have our welcome by Dr. Hobson Wildenthal, Executive Vice President, University of Texas at Dallas. Dr. Wildenthal.
Thank you, Arthur. I'm always grateful for the opportunity to participate in this important day, but this year, more than ever, one of those reasons is progressive. Every year, I stay the same age and the students get younger. That's the way it seems. More technically, my birth year remains the same and the students' birth years get later and later. But as a one-time teacher, it's always an urge to try to teach, and in this case, teach from my own life experience. But the other reason is singular. In this year of what I would call debased and divisive and vulgar rhetoric, it's very important for our young people to realize that this is not the norm, that the norm is somewhere far above today, and the pinnacle, one of the pinnacles was set by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's important for our young people to realize that we've got a wonderful history, an elegant, noble history, and I want to make sure that they realize that, young as they are, consumed by the daily news feed. So this is always an important day. In my own thinking, it's legitimate to regard Martin Luther King as an African-American hero, or a hero for African Americans. I prefer to think of him as a human hero and a hero for humanity. But whichever way we like to think of him, it is inspiring to me to look back in history and realize how high we can go as distinct from how low we can go. And so let's keep that in mind. We can't all be heroes like Martin Luther King, but we can do our duties. We can vote, we can speak, we can do our jobs, and remember that there is a mark of human leadership that's way up there, set by Martin Luther King, equal to anything we know in history. So, again, privileged to be here with you. Arthur, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Wildenthal. And let me apologize. I think that I have been around here so long, I think everybody knows who I am. And I'm wrong. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Arthur Gregg, and I have the pleasure of serving as Assistant Vice President for Multicultural Affairs and the Director of our Multicultural Center here at UT Dallas. So, again, welcome. Now that you know who I am. I always joke with Bruce August, who works in the office, because throughout the day, people will walk by and they'll go, hey, Mr. Bruce, and I'll go, hey, how are you? And then he says, you know, that happens to me. And he say, you know, hey, Mr. Arthur. And he said, and I just say, hey, how are you? And I said, Bruce, I don't know if that's a compliment. You don't have as much gray and wear and tear that I do. So I take it as a compliment when I get called Mr. Bruce. But I am Arthur Gregg. So at this time, I would like to introduce you to one of our amazing alum, Miss Maya Piata, who is going to provide the invocation. Maya.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fear relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. I see. Thank you.
Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Come on now. When I tell you we have the most talented, brightest students in the world, believe me, as you can see. Thank you so much, Maya. So much, thank you. So beautiful. Okay, so now it's breakfast time. So I got a deal. Got a deal for you. So every one of you put your cell phone on the table. The first, and turn it down. The first one who turns their phone up to answer it has to pay for breakfast. That's how you handle that. That's how you keep people engaged. No, just kidding. So we're going to our same breakfast rules every year. For those of you who are new, we have a few things that we do at breakfast. when we go out to prepare and get the food. One thing is, remember, there's someone behind you who is hungry too. It's plenty. You don't have to feed everybody on your first round. It's plenty. But we're going to be under direction of our wonderful caterers today. They're going to release our tables. We're going to start out, though, with our table 22 and table 15. We always love for our guest speaker to start us out. And so tables 15 and 22 will lead us out into the buffet. There are 2 buffets. The same thing is on both. So if you're in one line and you look over and you see something different, there's a problem. For those of you who are wondering, well, what are we going to have? We're going to help you. We already put it in the program. So you already know when you get there, you should know what you're going to get, right? Awesome, thank you. So if we can have tables 22 and 15, if you will lead the buffet, and then our awesome, great catering staff will release us, the other tables, out to the buffet. Well, by your smiling faces and your wonderful conversation, I take it the food is a hit. I take it the food is a hit. Everybody's smiling. There are no frowns. There's good conversation. So, as we said earlier, we have amazing students here on this campus. And I would like to personally thank this group of students that's kind of to my right here. We have about 30, almost 30 students, along with TCU, who will be attending the Southwestern Black Student Leadership Conference at Texas A&M. They're leaving right after breakfast, so you can clap it up for. I know that they were excited about coming to the breakfast. I think they're more excited about coming to the breakfast than the going to the conference. I'm hoping that's the case. But our partners from TCU they're arriving, and so we're getting them situated. And our students will have an opportunity. Our students will have an opportunity to hear our speaker today and to have a hot breakfast before they get on that warm, cozy bus to ride to College Station. So again, thank you all so much. We know you will represent UTD well. We have several students, and we have some of our staff who will be attending with our students. Monica Williamson from the Multicultural Center, Kimberly from our undergraduate education. And so, Kimberly, you're in charge. Everybody out there, Kimberly, Miss Kimberly and Miss Monica are in charge. So, along with our great students that we have that are attending this conference, we want to share a new initiative that we had this year, a day of service with students. And so at this time, I am going to, it was students in the Office of Student Volunteerism. So I definitely want to thank Mackenzie and the Office of Student Volunteerism for collaborating with us on this program. But now I would like to introduce Michelle Anoha, who is a part of, we call her part of the Student Voices of UTD. So Michelle.
Oh, you're already tall, so it's cool. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Anoha. I'm a junior majoring in biology and minoring in psychology. I work as a multicultural peer advocate in the Multicultural Center and as a peer-led team leader in the Student Success Center. And I had the pleasure of serving in the first ever UTD MLK Day of Service. Students from the Terry Scholars Athletic Department, Undergraduate Success Scholars, the Diversity Scholars Program, the Student Diversity Advisory Council, and the Multicultural Center had the opportunity of packing meals for hungry children in the DFW area. But rather than tell you about the event, I'd like to show you. Enjoy.
So today is the MLK Day of Service, a meal packing event. We're out here, there's 100 students, and the purpose of the event today is to spread awareness about food insecurity in Dallas, and also just to mobilize all of the students who want to do good and make a difference in their communities.
Personally, I just like helping people because, it just puts your life in perspective, and just putting others before yourself is always something that I follow and value.
This volunteering meant a lot for me personally, just because I know that if we had the time and opportunity to, help people out who are less fortunate than ourselves, then we should do so. And that's why I thought this was a great event for us to come out to.
Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. And that's why we're here today, so that we can unite in service and help move our community toward Dr. King's vision for a beloved community.
Thank you so much. If any of the students who participated, if you're here, would you just stand and be acknowledged? Any of our students who participated? Thank you so much. So at this time, I am going to ask Ms. Taylor Grant Gates, who will come and introduce our speaker for the morning. Taylor.
Good morning, everyone. Okay. My name is Taylor Grant Gates. I'm a junior majoring in emerging media and communications here on campus. I am also the vice president of the Sigma Kappa chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Skiwi, yeah, all right. I am also a student worker with the Department of Community Engagement, and I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker for this breakfast. Reverend Francis Cujo Waters, JD, is the founder and CEO of FCW Consulting and the newly formed African American Renaissance LLC in Dallas, Texas. She is a highly regarded educational, diversity, and organizational strategic consultant. Her leadership, diversity expertise, and ability to successfully facilitate groups with diverse views and backgrounds has created successful results and increased communication and mutual understanding among them. Francis was asked by the mayor of Dallas to serve as the chair of Dallas Task Force on Confederate Monuments 1 week after violence erupted in Charlottesville, Virginia. She smoothly and successfully led this Dallas Task Force to consensus and success. Born in the Bronx, New York, Francis is the daughter of two first-generation college graduates. We're gonna wing it, oh, okay. Who went on to become college professors. Francis graduated with honors from Stanford University and Harvard Law School and has served as an associate pastor in the United Methodist Church. She combines faith, intellect, media, and strategic planning expertise in dynamic, innovative ways that result in organizational transformation, creative problem solving, and educational innovation. Mrs. Waters is a highly sought-after national speaker, speaking at colleges, universities, conferences, churches, and corporations across the country. Most recently, she gave a TED Talk on the intersection of race and gender and on the impact of arts and culture in November 2017. She currently serves on the executive board of the Southern Methodist University Meadows School and on the Education and Engagement Committee of the Dallas Museum of Art. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and a proud Jack and Jill mom. She resides in Dallas, Texas with her husband of 21 years and their 3 wonderful teenage sons. Francis gives God all the glory for every good thing in her life, and her favorite scripture is "Don't conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds," Romans 12:2. Consequently, her purpose and mission in life is to transform the world by encouraging all of those with whom she interacts with the following: don't conform, transform your life and this beautiful world. Please assist me in welcoming Reverend Francis Cujo Waters, JD, to the stage.
ready? Is the mic on? Move that out of the way. We're good. It's good to be here this morning. How are you doing this morning? I'm a preacher too, so I like people to talk back to me, so I'm sort of like that. So let's try again. How are y'all doing this morning? Okay, good, good, good. Listen, I need y'all to wake up. I know you're eating. I know it's early, but I'm going to give you something to do so we can get started. Can everybody just stand up for a second and stretch out your legs and stretch out real quick? I'm going to give you 60 seconds to tell the person next to you what you think is the most extraordinary thing about Dr. King. You've got 60 seconds. Think about like you're sending a tweet. Make it quick. 60 seconds. Everybody in the room, go. Okay, switch it up, switch it up. The next 60 seconds is coming. And you are done. Have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. Very nice, very nice. I want 3 people in the room very quickly to shout out to me what somebody said was the greatest thing about Dr. King. Somebody in this part of the room, real quick, stand up and be bold. Nonviolence. Nonviolence, thank you very much. The middle of the room, be bold, stand up. Oh, come on, middle. Wait, say it again. Perseverance. Perseverance, lovely. I want this part of the middle to stand up. His legacy lives on, so enduring legacy. And this side, oh, it's a big side of the room. You can have 2 people. Okay, tell me something over this side of the room that was great about King.
Gandhi.
Gandhi, okay, very good. And some more? So, I stand up. Resilience, very nice. Come on. Selflessness, lovely. I can't leave y'all out, this whole big section. Somebody. Ability to mobilize masses. Oh, I like that. I might use that. Thank you. Somebody else? I can't leave y'all before I start. You can't. You have to stand up, young lady. Thank you. Activism from a young age. Wonderful. So I'm excited. So you all know why you're here this morning, right? We're here to celebrate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but more than that, when I speak about Dr. King, and it's been a busy week, I've been in Tyler, I've been in San Antonio, I'm glad to be back home in Dallas, but when I think about the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I like to use his whole name, I like the whole name. Every part of that indicates something different about his legacy, right? The Reverend, so he was a preacher and a teacher, and he had this theological basis. The doctor, he had this academic excellence that came through in persevering through the doctoral level of his studies. And then his name, Martin Luther, you know, he was named after his father, who renamed himself after Martin Luther, who started the whole Protestant Reformation. So another change agent. And then Junior, he was somebody's baby. So I like the whole name, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I love to celebrate the life and legacy of that great man. But I like to not only stop there, but I think the real challenge for us is that we love what he did, but the real question is, what will we do? It's wonderful to celebrate somebody else's legacy, but unless we examine what our own personal legacy will be, or our own institutional legacy will be, then we really haven't caught the true meaning or message of the work. And so one of my favorite quotes comes from the author Frantz Fanon in his book, The Wretched of the Earth. And I was sitting next to your Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and I was an English major undergrad. I remember when I first read him, I was about 19 years old, and I was so struck by the words in that book, The Wretched of the Earth. And in that book, one of my favorite quotes is this. He says that every generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. I'm going to say that one more time. Every generation, so not just Dr. King's generation, not just the people of the 50s and 60s, but every generation must discover its mission. And after you discover it, you've got a decision to make. You can fulfill it, or you can betray it. And so we are here to celebrate the life of a man who decided to fulfill the mission of the moment in his day and time. But the greater question is, what is our mission in 2018? What work is there yet to do? And so if we think about generational missions, we're here with people who are my age. I'm in my 40s now, so my generation had a different mission maybe than my parents' generation in their 60s and 70s. And you who are students, you've got a whole nother mission. Every time I talk to somebody who says they're the class of 20-something, it's clear to me there's a whole new generation that's coming through. I often laugh. I thank you for your wonderful introduction. It's always fun for me when I meet young ladies who are like about your age, and they say, oh, what year did you graduate from college? And when I say 19, they just glass over. 19 anything. They're like, oh, you're from the 1900s? I am. I'm from the 1900s. And shockingly, we're still around, those of us born in the 1900s. But what's clear to me is this. If you just turn on the news in the morning, you know there's work to be done. There's still conflict all around. There are still people in need. There's still a nation that needs strong, clear voices where people will be willing to engage in civil discourse. Civil discourse. When I was asked by the mayor of Dallas to chair the task force on Confederate monuments, it was 1 week after Charlottesville, Virginia. And I got to tell you, it was interesting. I was not expecting it, and I wasn't so sure how I felt about it. Violence was erupting all over the country, not in 1963. We're talking about 2018. As you all remember with Charlottesville, a woman had just been killed when they had the marches. Lots of armed neo-Nazi groups were going around to the different places. People's lives were in danger. And I thought to myself, I care deeply about these issues, but I was concerned about the safety of my family. I don't live in a gated community. I live right there in Dallas, and you can Google right now and find out where I live. And at the same time we were going through this process, our city councilor, Jennifer Stallbuck Gates, began to get death threats. If you saw it, it was on the front page of the Dallas Morning News, not in 1963, 2017. And she lives about 4 blocks from me. The mayor was getting death threats. And so as I thought about this, I have 3 children and a husband and no gates or guards. And so I thought a little bit, and I said to the mayor, can you give me 24 hours to think about whether I want to chair this the week after Charlottesville? And I went home to my husband, and I asked him his thoughts and his opinions, and he's always so supportive. He said, whatever you want to do, it's going to be fine. I'll support you. And when I was thinking about it, this is what I thought about. I thought about my foreparents who had faced angry dogs in the street. I thought about those of black and brown skin who had been beaten and battered just trying to get the right to vote. I thought about those who had gone before me who had faced the ultimate sacrifice of their lives through lynching and mob violence just to have their basic civil rights respected. And I said to my husband, well, if all I've got to do is get down to City Hall, if I can help the city of Dallas to not have that kind of outcome, and God is good, we didn't have that outcome. I've actually had other cities asking, how did you get it done so smoothly? And I'll tell you about that. But I said that if my foreparents could do as much as they did, surely in 2018, I've got to take this on. So I've said no to a lot of things, but I said yes to that. But I want you to know it was not without concern for my family's safety. Because I was saying, when a lot of us, when we get upset, we march. But when some folks get upset, they pick up arms. And that's a little scary. But again, every generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. So my feeling is I can't just go around being a speaker talking about diversity and talking about what we need to do in this nation, but then when the call comes to me personally, I don't accept the challenge. Each of us will be given opportunities to accept the challenge of leadership. Many of you who are students in here, you're just getting started, but many of you already have had that chance to accept that opportunity. You're here at UT Dallas, meaning that you've already chosen to be leaders. So the question is this: what will you do with what you're learning here to make the world a better place? I don't know about you, but I know that both my parents were the first generation to go to college in our families. Both of my grandmothers worked as housekeepers and domestic servants, and my grandfather worked on the shipyard until he was not able to work anymore, and they did not even have a high school diploma, but my parents went to college, and then I got to go to the next level. My mother put it like this. She said, it's like we're running a race, honey, and every generation hands the baton off to the next generation. And it's the responsibility of every generation to run as hard and fast and as well as they possibly can. And so my question this morning is this: what are you doing to run your race? Are you being faithful to the history that got you to where you are right now? And then are you creating a legacy for those who will come after you to make the world a better place? I want everyone in here to be clear about the fact that we are all standing on somebody else's shoulders. As brilliant as you are, as gorgeous as you are, as amazing as you are, you did not get here by yourself. And so when we realize that, we begin to understand why service matters. One of the great quotes that I love, that's actually was first uttered by Shirley Chisholm and then was appropriated by many people after her, but Shirley Chisholm was the first to say it. She said that service is the rent that we have the privilege of paying for having the privilege of living on this earth. Service is the rent you pay for the privilege of living on this earth. And so when we live lives that are completely self-involved and self-engaged, we sort of miss the greater point of this whole thing. So when we look at King, it's a great example. I want to think about how he builds on this idea of service matters and how he builds on the idea that we're standing on each other's shoulders. The civil rights movement, which has become this wonderful, iconic period of time in the 50s and 60s that we love to talk about, did not exist in a vacuum. In fact, really when you look at that movement, it was a part of a continuum of change, a continuum of struggles for justice and human dignity that existed in this nation. Now, understand that we're talking, one of the things that's a taboo thing for whatever reason in this country is race, and people get real nervous and stressed out about talking about race. I don't understand that personally. To me, it's just one more factor. I'm a woman, I'm an American, I'm African American, I'm a mother. It's one of the things that makes me who I am. It's my heritage. And so we should be able to engage in constructive dialogue about things that matter. Sadly, part of the human condition is this: we find ways to divide ourselves that are arbitrary, yet have serious consequences. In this country, it happens to be race. But if you look across the world, we find lots of ways of dividing ourselves. We look at some places, it's religion, right? So we look at the Israeli-Arab conflict. Look at Ireland. For years, it was the Protestant-Catholic conflict. I mean, we find ways to divide and conquer. And in the U.S., it just happens to be that race is our ongoing issue. From the beginning of the formation of this country until now. And so if we pretend like it doesn't exist, we'll never get it right. The reality is that when this country was discovered, there were already some people living here. And I have friends, some like me prefer Native American, some use Indian, who lived here, and they were living here before they got discovered. Imagine if somebody discovered your house. You worked hard for many years. It's passed down from generation to generation. Your great-grandfather lived in the house. Your grandmother lived in the house. Your parents, it's been passed down to you. And somebody discovered your house. And they decided they were taking over your whole house. But you could live in the basement if you wanted to. But by the way, while you're living in the basement, we'd like for you to become our servant in your house. And if you get upset about it and get rowdy, I'm going to call you a savage. Because you're getting mad because I'm letting you live in your own house. You know what? Why don't we put y'all in the backyard. Just get out of the whole house. We're going to import some other servants from somewhere else to come into this house and work that out. We'll get back to that in a second. And every time you rise up, we're going to then stereotype you as being belligerent, savages. Show movies with people, you scalping people's heads. But it was your house. That's another lecture, okay. So America's had some issues around diversity for a long time. So we got discovered and then decided we'd go to another continent and bring over a whole nother group of people, because the people that we discovered their house, it was hard, we didn't have enough people to work on our land, so we went and got another group of people who seemed pretty hardy and brought them over. Is there any wonder that we're having some conflict issues here along the way? We won't even get into the subsequent immigration policies. The interesting thing about the construction of race is this: it is an arbitrary construct, but it has really important implications for how we live our lives. People's lives are affected by this construct of race. There's a good book that came out many years ago called How the Irish Became White. Because at the end of the last century, so around 1900, if you looked at the US Census, it was very interesting. Irish was a race, Jewish was a race. Are you with me here? Black was a race. So again, we, from time to time and generation to generation, we redefine what a race is. But the reality is that we're all human beings who should be striving to live together on this amazing gift that we've been given called Earth, right? Okay, so let's look at how we're standing on people's shoulders. So we look at the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1920s, and we see that he's a part of an ongoing continuum in this struggle for justice. So we can go back even to thinking about the abolitionists who were fighting against the idea. Abolitionists who were black and white and had different backgrounds, who were fighting against this idea of the institution of slavery. They were a part of this continuum in the struggle for justice. And then you see that we get to the end of the Civil War and that the slaves are freed, and Texas found out a little bit later. I love Texas, it's home now, but a little bit later. That's okay, everybody celebrates Juneteenth now, but eventually all the slaves were freed, but there was a backlash against that like nobody's business, right? So what we find is that by 1896, you have the landmark Supreme Court case of Plessy v. Ferguson that decides that we can be as separate as the fingers on the hand, but one country, and that was the basis for new Jim Crow law that said that we would be separate but equal, and we all know that separate was never equal. Interestingly, we found out when I was chairing the Confederate Monuments Task Force, because a lot of the outcry for people was, we can't erase history, we can't erase history. I made a very strong point of remaining neutral through the entire thing. I felt that as the chair, I wasn't going to give my opinion, I was going to facilitate conversation. And I had a couple of very simple rules. We will be respectful of each other, even when we disagree. We will engage in civil discourse. And Dallas is going to show the rest of the country how we interact with each other, even when we don't like each other. And I was very firm on that. I'm a very friendly person, but everybody at City Hall thinks I'm pretty hardcore now. I just wouldn't tolerate any kind of disrespect. So we had very conservative thoughts. We had very, very liberal thoughts. I had folks who were like, we don't want to move it because we don't want to change the history, and they were very offended by the idea. I had folks on the other end who were like, we want to remove them, destroy them like Baltimore did, tear them up. And so I had to facilitate that conversation. And because we were able to engage in civil discourse, we ended up with consensus on almost every recommendation. And people have asked it, they said, how did you do that? I said, well, I like to facilitate conversation, but one of the ways we did it is that we actually talked to and listened to each other. And sometimes when you actually talk to people and listen to people, even if they have different views, you'll find that you're not always as far apart as you think. And so one thing we learned in that commission is that there were two major monuments in Dallas that were at issue. One of them was, of course, placed around 1896. Well, isn't that something? Plessy v. Ferguson. So it was decades after the Civil War. It had nothing to do with the Civil War. They were trying to send a message that we are now going to have segregation and Reconstruction is over. The other one was placed in Dallas and Robert E. Lee in 1936. This is like 50 years after the war. So you're wondering what that's about. Well, that was during the time we were celebrating the centennial of Dallas, so 100-year history, and Fair Park, where we all go for the state fair, was opening up, and among the things there was the Hall of Negro Life. It was celebrated throughout the country. It was done with such excellence, and I want you to know that they destroyed it the year later. At the time at which that monument was put up, Dallas had the largest Ku Klux Klan lair in the country. 13,000 Klansmen, and we don't talk about that. If you go to the SMU archives, you'll see that actually at that time, Cabal was requiring that to be a police officer in Dallas, you had to join the Klan. So that's a whole nother conversation. But that's why it's important to understand our history. And so, I love STEM. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I totally support it because I love my Apple and everything else that STEM creates. But there's a place for humanities because you have to understand history and context. You have to understand how this civil process works in order to create a world where everything else can flow. So we have that case in 1896. We have lynchings on an all-time high. And that's why you have people like Ida B. Wells Barnett. I love her because she hyphenated in the 1800s. Wells Barnett. I'm Cudjoe Waters. I love that. And so we have her, we have Du Bois, and they formed the Niagara Conference in 1905. In 1909, you have the formation of the NAACP, the first calling of that meeting. Interestingly, the NAACP first meeting was called not by black activists, but by white activists, white folks who said, this is ridiculous. And so I want you to know, even with this, justice is everybody's business. Oftentimes when we talk about diversity, we talk about sort of African Americans, and we talk about Latinos, we talk about Native Americans and Asians and what our role is. But let's be clear, justice is everybody's business. Treating human beings with dignity, treating human beings in ways that make sense, that's a human issue. So when we have these diversity issues, I expect and I want to see everybody at the table. One of the questions I get asked a lot when I speak these days, oftentimes when there's a Q&A, and I'll have a lot of my Anglo brothers and sisters say to me, what can we do to help with the situation? And I say to them this, I don't know what you can do. Racism is not a black problem. We aren't racist. So what I need you to do is you tell me how you can organize in your community. I'll think about how I can organize in my community, and then let's come together and work together. But I need you to tell me how to talk to your relatives you know you have at dinner at Thanksgiving who say things that really aren't very nice. Are you going to be brave enough to stand up to your grandfather when you know what he thinks of people of color? What are you going to say to your aunt who's decided that she's definitely got to have a wall built? The room got quiet. Let me continue. So what we find is that that's coming up in the early part of the last century. And then how many of you have heard of the name Charles Hamilton Houston? Raise your hand if you have. Okay. Okay, so most people never, and that's part of, again, reclaiming our history. So we know, have you heard of President Barack Obama? Oh man, some hands didn't go up. Have we? So he was the first African American to be the editor of the Law Review at Harvard Law School, my alma mater. But the first African American to be on the Harvard Law Review was Charles Hamilton Houston in the 1920s. And he came out of Harvard Law and he looked around the landscape of America and he decided that his mission in life, his generational mission, was to dismantle the legal apartheid system that existed at that time in America. And he began to try cases, but he realized after a while he couldn't try all those cases by himself, and so he then went and became the dean of Howard Law School, a historically black university. And so at Howard, he trained the greatest cadre of lawyers this country had ever seen, including and among them Thurgood Marshall. And my advisor in law school was a Judge A. Leon Higginbotham, another name you should know. He had been the chief of the Third Circuit, but he worked with Thurgood Marshall, and he's the one who fought a lot of the voting rights cases that came on. And he and Thurgood and all these folks went to work on the legal system that existed. I'm almost done. I know it's not a history lecture, but stay with me because we're getting to the importance of how we work together on this thing. And so they fought, and they ultimately got Brown v. Board. You've heard of Brown v. Board. It went before the Supreme Court in 1954, and they went before my favorite Supreme Court justice. His name was Earl Warren. And Earl Warren threw everybody off because Eisenhower appointed Warren to be the chief of the Supreme Court. He was a Republican, a conservative Republican, and he threw all of them off their game, because he was determined to do the right thing. And so when you get to Brown v. Board, what I love about Earl Warren is this. Brown wasn't decided based on the precedents that came before them. This is what Earl Warren would do. A white man appointed by Eisenhower, a Republican, but that's what I'm saying, it's not a partisan issue. It's just a right and wrong issue. And so what he would do at the end of the cases is he got all the justices in the room, he locked the door and said, okay, so I've heard all the arguments, but what I need to ask you is this. Is it right? I know what the precedents say, but is it right? If we in our lives could implement that taste test, that little test right there, is it right? I know the crowd is saying we've got to do this, but is it right? I know they're sending home people who came to this country and their parents didn't have legal entrance, but they've grown up their whole lives here and they're trying to get an education. Is it right? I know that the laws are actually skewed and they're actually not really fair, but we're locking up people who really have not committed any violent crimes because we want to fill some jails. Many of them are private. Is it right? Is it right? And so they came down and said that Brown v. Board would happen, integration would happen, but then they needed to actually test the laws on the books, and here comes the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. See, I was going somewhere. Y'all got that? It's a continuum of justice. And so each person did what only they could do. Dr. King couldn't argue the cases like Thurgood Marshall. He didn't have a legal background. But I tell you what, nobody could get the people out into the street to march and face what they fought like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Each of us has a role to play in history. So we love to romanticize the 60s. It was rough times. People were getting locked up, beaten up, abused. It was not fun, so we can look back comfortably as we sit in this beautiful room at UT Dallas. But I want you to know that when you leave these walls, there's still work to do. So you can see Selma in those movies. And so basically, King came and brought his knowledge as a theologian and an academician. And then we had Thurgood, and we had those who had great legal minds. You had Harry Belafonte, and you had others who were performers who came and lended their entertainment ability. Everybody did what they could. And I need everyone here to do what they can. So I want to close with this idea. There's a song that's in the church, and it says, the refrain says this: if I can help somebody as I travel along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can help somebody and keep them from doing wrong, then my living will not be in vain. Every generation must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it. This morning I challenge you to discover your mission, fulfill that mission, and if you do that, your living will not be in vain. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Reverend Francis Cujo, JD. I just had this urge to say, is there one? The doors are open. There will be a collection plate coming your way. We like soft money. We don't like anything that makes noise. Wow. I feel that there is work to be done. Wow. Students, you hear that? There is work to be done, even in College Station this weekend. Around the leadership program, there's work to be done, and on this campus. At this time, I will bring Dr. George Fair, our Vice President for Office of Diversity and Community Engagement and Dean of Interdisciplinary Studies here at UT Dallas.
Thank you, Reverend Cujo Walters. It was inspiring and a very interesting and insightful presentation. So thank you very much for bringing that to our university. An important statement is, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I am thrilled at how the students, faculty, and staff at UT Dallas will go far together. Led by the Multicultural Center, this breakfast is an example of how UT Dallas and the Office of Diversity and Community Engagement collaborate to celebrate success on our campus. So we go together. One measure of this is the move into this new Alumni Center. Another measure is the cooperation that we have with the Office of Diversity and Community Engagement, the Gallerstein Gender Center, the Community Engagement Office, led by Raul Hinojosa, and diversity initiatives led by Rosie Peterson, and our Gallerstein Gender Center led by Lauren DeSillas. This is also a celebration of the success of the Office of Diversity and Community Engagement has had for the last year. And so we continue to have that kind of success. We continue to have programs that we want to bring to the university campus and celebrate our our campus together. One major accomplishment has been our development of employee resource groups, and now we have employee resource groups. 7 employee resource groups have been established at UT Dallas. UT Dallas is also recognized for its value and diversity by U.S. News and World Report. So we're very proud of that we're proud of the diversity and of the kind of organizations that we have here at UT Dallas, and we'll continue to do that. I would also like to share with you that on the Office of Diversity and Community Engagement's webpage, you'll find statements from President Benson and Chancellor McRaven on our website in regard to DACA. Both of these statements indicate that UT Dallas is united in our efforts to provide a safe environment for all UT Dallas students. So I just want to let you all understand that we are a very broad and diverse community, and that we really feel that this is an important measure for all of us. So I want to just say thank you all for coming this morning. Thank you for the people, and we've got lots of folks at the university that helped to plan this activity from our offices. So I'd like to have those students and or adults that were active in planning this activity this morning, please stand and receive the clapping from our folks. Recognition. So, just thank you all for coming and having a breakfast with us. It's been inspiring, and I know that we'll all go forward and think about what was said this morning, think about what we need to do, and think about how we can be committed to just a greater United States for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fair. And before we leave, we have one last treat for you. I'm going to invite Miss, make sure I get it right, Ifumu Anuha Ife. Miss Ife from who's a student leader here, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what's going to happen next, real quickly. But I do want to just say a special thank you to Mr. Bruce August Jr. from the Multicultural Center, and who heads up the breakfast every year, and then to the rest of the Multicultural Center staff for your support, as well as SWAB, edited by Gino, Jonathan White, and Mara Jackson. So thank you all so much for making the day as amazing, this breakfast as amazing as it is, has been, and will be. I did say one last thing, the Dream Week, we show the day of service, MLK Day of Service, and some of us, some of our ERGs participated in the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade on Monday. Next year, you will get a personal invitation to march with us in the parade and or participate with us in the day of service. So save the date. Same time, different place, different year. So, Iffy?
Thank you, Arthur. He was close. He was close on my name. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ifoma Huna, and I'm a student here at UT Dallas. I'm majoring in marketing and supply chain. In addition to that, I serve as the executive chair of SWAB, which is our student activities here. So, as our program nears its end, we saw only fit to leave some food, or better yet, art for thought. Abel Garcia is an established Dallas-based artist who draws inspiration from the Bible, hip-hop style, graffiti, and the High Renaissance movement. He successfully blends these differing elements into his own specific style using methods such as screen printing, acrylic painting, oil painting, and graffiti. Abel's fun energy, talent, and infectious personality has landed him clients like the Dallas Mavericks, FC Dallas, the Leader Cast, the Dallas Repertoire Ballet, and boxer Austin Trout. You may also see his graphic designs in places like Market Street, Sushi, Axiom, LA Fitness, and many other facilities. Referred to as the modern-day Degas by many of his peers, Abel was also voted Austin's Visual Artist of the Year in 2011 by Raw Natural Born Artists. Abel has shown in Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, Atlanta, Las Cruces, and New York City. He has been commissioned for hundreds of paintings by clients from all over the globe, including the United States and Europe. Abel's passion for what he does is absolutely apparent in all of his works. After all, he did coin the phrase, "Why sleep when you can paint?" In the last 5 minutes of the program, as Abel begins to paint, we ask you to take some time to gaze upon this canvas. It is much like a new notebook or a new calendar. It can be written on, drawn on, color-coded, contain dates, birthday events, celebrations, graduations, and the like. In the words of Dr. King, what will you do for others in 2018? Who will you serve, and what will it look like? Abel, take us away.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory. Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, his spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots be on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory. Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish, and then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, oh glory, oh. Selma is now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald ego. No one can win a war individually. It take the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of the Lord, my eyes have seen the glory. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, glory, glory,
Our artists will continue to paint. This concludes our breakfast this morning. Thank you so much again for coming. The centerpieces on the table, not the numbers, but the beautiful flowers, are for grabs. They are yours, and we thank you again for being a part of this wonderful occasion. Again, thank you, Reverend Cudjoe Waters. There's work to be done. Thank you.